All right, we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge of
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom. Here. Mrs. Spirito.
Here.
Ms. Laird. Ms. Lewis.
Here.
Mr. Price.
Here. Ms. Laird will be joining us shortly. She's running a few minutes late, so. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from our regular meeting on on January 9th, 2023, please?
So move.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis.
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom.
Yes.
Mrs. Spirito.
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion is approved. We'll wait for Chantel. We can come back to the legislative report if she has something. No walk-on items tonight. Hearing of the public, there isn't anyone here that is going to address the board, so we'll skip that part. Moving on to the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Price. Just a couple of things from me before I hand the floor over for our report on gifted this evening. On our agenda tonight is a March 22nd Safety Day, and I sort of give you guys a heads up on this. Kind of grew out of all the, everything that's going on across the country and the world. Just a day that we'll have kids stay home on March 22nd, and I've got now 5 first responding agencies involved in helping me plan that. So what really for that day, we're going to have a whole staff meeting first in the morning in the Performing Arts Center. Go over just kind of some broad things, philosophical questions, maybe some training and some broad scope things about our safety plans. And then throughout the day, then we'd like to go building to building with those agencies and have some drills very specific for those buildings. We'd like to do they call it a bang test or whatever. So our police officers will shoot blanks in the building so that teachers have a sense of what it sounds like in different areas of the building. That's an example of some of the things we'd like to be able to do without students in the building. Just also then some scenarios. It's kind of fun, not fun. Think on your feet kind of drills. Get on the PA and say, okay, something's happened, X, Y, and Z. What would you do? And then get together and debrief on that. So there's some of the things we got planned for that day, just trying to stay ahead of a horrible trend in our country, which is threatening all of us. So that's coming March 22nd. You are certainly welcome to come. That first thing at 8 o'clock, just for introductions if you'd like to, and then we'll kind of go out throughout our day there. Happy to have any questions on that if you have anything. Along that, too, is a new initiative by the governor for threat assessment. And we will have, I've been trained now for threat assessment, so I'm part of the district threat assessment team. Each building will have its own threat assessment team. Looks like basically the principal, guidance counselor, maybe a teacher as well, just 2 or 3 people. But the role of those committees or teams will be to, if a situation is with individual students, let's say a child makes a threat, and it's a little more than that normal, I'm going to punch you in the mouth. And if it's escalated to something that really we want to analyze, we've been trained to sort of use this protocol and some steps to look at how serious is it legitimate, and if so, what our plan is. And there's a nice process to follow through. So a nice way, I think, to try to cover ourselves in making sure we're really looking at every situation when we need to, and looking at the potential escalation and so forth, and getting kids the help they need if they need it. But it's a little more formal process. It's really something we've always done, right? A kid makes a statement, we look into it, we call home, we get counseling involved, we do all kinds of things, but this is just a little more formalized process. So looking forward to that. Also, I remind you that our next meeting will be in the Performing Arts Center. It's time for, I almost said students of the month, but we've changed that to stellar students because they are one shot a year for every grade level, every classroom in the district. A5 will have a chance to, then we'll have a middle school too, but we've changed it to stellar students, but that'll be next board meeting, next the 13th. So we'll be in the Performing Arts Center. I'll send you a reminder to make sure you remember, but looking forward to that. It's always a fun night. If you want to see something fun or hear something fun, talk about our middle school girls wrestling team. I'm not sure they've lost a match yet. And I mean big tournaments, and they haven't lost yet. These girls are something. And our high school team is right there too. They've only lost a couple in big meets. Like they're 4th out of 40 teams, that kind of thing. So girls wrestling continues to be a lot of fun. And then this last Saturday, I went to the girls wrestling match, but at the same time, our musicians went to Genoa for the OMEA, which is the Ohio Music Educators Association adjudicated solo and ensemble event. And I talked to Mr. Calhoun today, and he said we had a grand showing, a lot of ones. And what's impressive is some of our Class A ones. Students pick difficulty, levels of difficulty, A, B, and C, A being the highest. We had several A difficulty with 1 rating. So that's it. I mean, it doesn't get any more difficult or more challenging in high school. So some pretty talented young people in our district. So I want to make sure you were aware of that. Also, I had students today telling me that they're already doing a snow dance for Wednesday. I don't know if it works or not. Maybe it's all superstition, but everyone's got their formula. It's inside out pajamas or ice bath. Or people throw ice. It's just a lot of fun to talk about, but everybody has their snow ritual. The kids especially are trying to figure out a way to get a snow day on Wednesday. We'll see. Nothing in the works yet. So that's kind of it for me. I don't know if you have any questions about anything specific before we kind of move on with our presentation. All right. We brought with us Ms. Felsky. She's been with the district for 4 years. And I'll let Mrs. Hurt sort of introduce her and kind of how that all happened to be, because it has always been like this, has it?
Thank you, Mr. Detweiler. Good evening, Mr. Price, board members. We have served our gifted students in a variety of fashions over the years, but we have not always had the opportunity to have someone outside of our district join us as a coordinator and provide that leadership. We've had years in the district where we've assigned that gifted coordinator position to one of our building principals, or brought it into my department. And sometimes at that point, it becomes that extra duty, that extra opportunity to examine students and make sure that we're providing what we need to provide. We're very, very fortunate. Lindsay has been with us, as Mr. Detweiler said, for the last 4 years. We do share her. She comes to us through the ESC, and we do share her with a couple of other districts. So her work week is crazy because she's in and out of multiple homes, and providing those very detailed services. The laws that govern special education is specifically gifted identification, as we term it here, are very specific, and something that as a district we want to make sure that we're staying on top of and that we are knowledgeable of. And she's a wonderful part of our team to help make sure that we have all of the pieces in places, in parts in place. So this is a good thing. So Lindsay, I'm going to let you tell us a little bit about gifted students and gifted service here in Fremont City Schools.
Okay. Thank you for the kind words. I love this home, just so you know. And we've been able to do a lot of good things over the last few years. I'm going to just take a moment to introduce our gifted staff. Staff of the gifted, and they're also very gifted themselves. None of them right here, but we have the opportunity to have 4 gifted intervention specialists. They all have gifted intervention specialist licenses and the background in gifted students and gifted education. And each of our elementary schools has one full-time gifted intervention specialist. Cindy Durrell is at Otis Elementary. Tommy Michael is at Krogan. Kendra Moore is at Lutz, and Connie Snyder is at Atkinson. And I cannot speak highly enough about this staff. Whenever I ask of them, they will do. I ask to meet with them pretty regularly just so we can touch base. They can work together, and they do a fantastic job working together and coming up with some creative things for our students. So if you see them, make sure you tell them hi. I know sometimes we tend to be our own little island, but they really do a fantastic job in their schools. So one of the things that has changed in the last, I say about 10 years, there's been a push at the state level to change some of our gifted policies and practices, and there's really been an emphasis, which has been a good thing, on giftedness. And one of the things that we start with is the definition of gifted, because anywhere you go, you get a different answer. But Ohio, the state of Ohio defines giftedness as someone who performs or shows potential for performing at a remarkably high level compared to people of their same age, experience, and environment. The biggest key for that when talking about giftedness is that word potential. A lot of times our view of a gifted student is one that is on top of things and very, very high performing and does whatever the teacher asks. And there are many cases where this is the opposite of what our gifted student looks like, because just because a student shows potential doesn't mean they're achieving that potential. So part of the reason there's been a push for gifted education is to make sure we know about those students, all those students, and we can help them achieve to their full potential. In the state of Ohio, and it differs by state, so in the state of Ohio, there are several areas where you can have a gifted identification. These areas include all of our academic areas: math, reading and writing, science, and social studies. There is also a superior cognitive abilities, and that is synonymous with an IQ. We also have creative thinking gifted identification and visual and performing arts identification. And my little color-coded key over there shows you how a student would get that identification. All of the academic areas, the cutoff is the 95th percentile or above. The superior cognitive, it varies by test, the assessment that we use, but it's generally around a 127 IQ and higher. The orange, the creative thinking, you have to have a qualifying IQ score plus then qualifying on a checklist that is filled out by someone close to the student that teaches them. Visual performing arts is a performance, portfolio, exhibition type assessment. And any assessment that we use to identify in the state of Ohio has to be approved by the state of Ohio. So every year comes out this list. It's a very, very tiny, tiny font that you go in and look at and see what assessments qualify our students. I have worked with Denise to get us some assessments that do multiple things, so we don't have to overly assess our students. So we'll talk about our assessments here in a second. The assessment that we use to identify in our academic areas of reading and math, which is what's required by the state, we use iReady, which also is an assessment that we use for multiple other items, within the district. You can see we assess reading and math 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, and then 6th, 7th, and 8th. At the middle school, we use the iReady reading. We are required that if we give an assessment, we must look at the data and we must identify with that assessment. So even though the requirement is you have to identify once in the K to 2 grade band and once in the 3 to 6 grade band, we are using the assessment at multiple levels, which is a good thing. And we are looking at that data every time we give it.
If I may, just real quick, Ms. Felsky,
absolutely.
that it used to be way more cumbersome than this. My history as a principal, if it was math, you had to give this test, or if it was social studies, you give them this test. I mean, so it was really cumbersome, had to be on the radar by either by a parent or a teacher or something. We missed a lot of kids. If you recognize that iReady, that's what we use, every day in our district for all kinds of things. So it's just when we say we've got a good system down, we really do. And I think it's a much better way to catch kids.
Yes, we are definitely.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, absolutely.
Make
Anybody
sure.
interrupt at any time.
I'm not shy
good
that
with
way.
it. But we give the iReady the diagnostic assessment in the fall, the winter, and the spring. So we have those 3 chances for a student to hit that 95th percentile or above in each of those. So the iReady, that's given those 3 times. And then for our required screening for our IQ, we have recently switched to the NNAT 3, which is also called the Naglieri. And this assessment is done in 2nd grade and in 5th grade. And we give this test in May. It took us down from an entire week of superior cognitive testing to getting it done in 45 minutes. And the results, I looked at our results from prior, and they were very, very similar. So I have a high confidence level in this assessment being a better route for what we're doing. Now, any of the areas that are not on here that are not required to be screened by state, I will assess if there is someone who refers, if there is a referral. And we have other assessments on that nice tiny print spreadsheet that allows us to assess in those areas as well. So, just a very superficial look at some of our gifted data. We currently in the district have approximately 240 students with at least one gifted identification. Many students have multiple, but at least 240 have at least one. On our last state report card, it came down to, we had 4.6% of our student population with a reading and writing identification. We service 3.2% of our student population in this area. The math identification is 3.3% of the district, serving 2.7% of the district. And our superior cognitive identification is 1.3% of the district, serving 0.9% of the population.
I have a quick question.
Absolutely.
Where the percentage identified is higher than the percentage served, let's talk about the difference. Where does that fall?
So we start our service in 3rd grade. We can begin identifying in 2nd grade. So we have that early year of transition into that. So we have some of those students who are not in that count. We also have students who the gifted program may not be the best fit. A parent may not want the service. The teachers and parents meet and agree, you know what, this placement may not be what's best for the student. And in that case, a parent would sign off. So we have a few of those pieces. In the high school, it gets to be where it depends the classes that a student is taking. And so if a student is taking and is interested in courses that don't correspond with their gifted identification, they might not be in that service percentage. So we'll generally see a higher percentage of identification than we will service.
Thank you.
Can I jump into
Absolutely.
that one? So for example, at the high school level, if we have a student who is identified gifted in math, but is engaged in AP Lit or AP Lang, we would have a non-served opportunity for that student because where they're choosing to take the course and serve does not line up to the identification for the student, or vice versa. If they're gifted in ELA and reading, but happen to be taking AP Calc, wonderful, option for our student, great challenge, but a disconnect, which was shown in that data.
Okay. Yep. Thank you.
And sometimes I say parents might pull them because they don't want it's not super disruptive, but there are some pull-out opportunities, right?
And we're going to talk about that. You're jumping ship
ahead.
on the
Just give me this.
never. To go along with that, some of this correlates. On our latest report card, we earned 10 out of the 15 points possible on the gifted indicator. Our strengths were in the areas of our gifted value added and our gifted identification and service. So seeing that disconnect in the percentage served, we still met our goals. So that's, if we aren't meeting our goal, that's when I start to get, what are we doing? Why aren't we servicing more? But we are meeting our gifted identification and service piece on the report card, telling me, we're on track in that area. And also, the one I consider the most important would be the gifted value added. Are our gifted students learning? Are they making gains as appropriate for a gifted student? And this is the one that is hard for districts to meet, and we met that this year. So those were definitely our strengths in this area. Our area for improvement would be the Gifted Performance Index. That's the area that we did not meet for this year. And the performance index is how are our gifted students achieving? So are they achieving on those state tests where they should be? And so we've actually started to dig into that data to take a look to see where and how we can help improve this area for improvement.
If I could jump real quick, just a reminder, because I know that we've talked about these report card components previously, and I know sometimes that gets to be such a challenge to discern which is which. So just a reminder that value-added component is where we always want to see our students make 1 year's growth as appropriate for that student. So where they start, and then to make 1 year's growth for that individual student. So Lindsay's saying that within our gifted component of students, we're meeting that aspect. That performance index, if you remember, within our test scores, we have 5 different levels, from limited and basic all the way to accomplished and accelerated. And where our students fall individually, again, to show their achievement, brings a point value that is different. So if they're proficient, they bring 1 point for that score. If they are advanced or accelerated, it's more than 1 point. And if they're limited or basic, that's less than 1 point. So that's a piece where we're digging into that data a little bit to look at our individual students. They may be making 1 year's growth, but they're not necessarily lining up their individual achievement to the potential that they could. And so it becomes that data pull really gets, she's a data geek, don't let her fool you. But it really gets very detailed, and it becomes very independent, student independent very quickly. But so that's just a quick reminder to that terminology when it comes to report card pieces.
You're so eloquent with that. That's good job.
So question just on that. So the value added is just in general that you take those markers or whatever from everything that student is doing. It's not just on a test.
No, it is. It's based on the Ohio state test.
Oh, okay.
State test.
The value added is.
Yes, that value added.
All of that.
All of those
All
are?
of that.
All of that is
All
going
of
to
our report card.
And in their gifted area? Or is this just overall?
In their gifted area, that's where our gifted students actually fall into multiple
Right.
places on the report card. They they take out the gifted, and we get reported as gifted, so they're in the gifted value added, their gifted
Right.
performance index. They also go back into the general population and count in
All
our
students.
general population of all students. So it's important, definitely, that we're looking down to the individual student level to make sure we add on to our strengths and that we increase our areas for improvement.
And one question. So I just want to make sure I understand this. So they're identified as gifted by like their iReady scores, but then they're assessed by state tests.
Yeah.
Yes, and
That is accurate.
And the state assessments are not on the list of approved assessments to identify for gifted.
Go figure.
Of course not. Why would they be?
Moving on, right?
Just to let you know. Yes.
Yeah,
And-
we'll kick
and-
that rock.
And if you remember when
Par for
we
the course.
started the whole iReady pieces, some of you will remember that one of the reasons why, as a district, that we were so inclined to go that route is because the iReady assessment was hit on multiple aspects of the vendor approved list. So it is one that counted as the diagnostic and counted as gifted ID'd and counted. So it gave
Great
us
reading
the
guarantee.
bigger bang for the buck, so that we weren't assessing our students multiple times, but being able to concentrate that data pull.
Good questions. As far as our gifted service, we do offer a spectrum of services. And I believe I said earlier, we start identifying in second grade. We do not at this time serve second grade. We do have periods of open time in some of the schedules of our gifted intervention specialists where they will go down and do some things to enrich. But we cannot count that as service because it does not meet the requirements set by the state. So we do not, we don't service in second grade currently. Then we transition into third grade where we do cluster grouping, which at the bottom there, cluster grouping is basically the intentional placement of students with similar identifications together in a classroom setting. There, if this is something that really interests you, there are many research guides out there that can describe cluster grouping and what it's good for the students, being able to be around students who think similarly, et cetera. That's the logic behind the cluster grouping, and that starts us off in our gifted program here in Fremont. Again, our gifted intervention specialists will go and work with students in third grade. They don't meet the time requirements, thus that's why we use cluster grouping in the third grade as opposed to in the fourth and fifth grade we cluster group the students, but then they also go to a pull-out setting with a gifted intervention specialist for the area of their identification. We do that in fourth and fifth grade, and those were those smiling faces that I showed you at the beginning of the presentation. Those are the teachers in the elementary buildings. When we go to middle school, we also have some instances of cluster grouping available. We offer subject acceleration in both ELA and math in advanced courses. At the high school level, again, there's sometimes the need for cluster grouping. It's not nearly as often. There are CCP course opportunities and advanced course opportunities that students can take at the high school that could qualify as gifted service. One of the other pieces to our elementary gifted program, which is I love this program, is our Creek Bend partnership. The gifted students at the elementary participate in a program at Creek Bend. They go about 4 times a year over to Creek Bend as a field trip where they are using the scientific method to do research in different areas. Depending on their grade level, they have different things going on that they're doing. It seems to be the favorite thing to do there is to be in the river or in the creek and doing that project. The students really, really enjoy that. And each year we get together with Creek Bend, the gifted intervention specialist and I, we meet several times and we try to keep improving and changing and working on things to keep this going. During COVID, when we weren't allowed to go over there, we got together and they came up with a worm project. So all our gifted intervention specialists had worm labs in their rooms where they still got to work through the scientific method with our students. And they did some Zoom field trip opportunities. The program has won an award for the Parks District, and it's just a really, really great opportunity for our students.
Nice.
There's some photos, and see the one on that side with the student who just came out of the river in his waders. They get involved in a lot there and work on research projects also and present their findings. But through the presentations, I've talked about the state report card and all the numbers and the data. But, when you dig down to it, it's our students. That's what we're doing all of this for. And these students, if you go and ask them, they're able to articulate the difference gifted programs make. And sometimes it's just nice to hear from the students. So Mrs. Moore's students decided to make a video about gifted and what it means. So I'll see if I can get it to start here for you.
Being gifted means to me understanding more about a topic and already knowing part of what you're learning.
Gifted means a big opportunity, and there's changes, but it's different. But I really like it. I'm smart, and I thought it would be hard, but with a great teacher, I've managed.
I really liked it gifted because Ms. Moore and all the students in this class are like built-in friends. It really is a challenge, like some of the work, but challenges are good.
What I love about gifted is the teacher. Because whenever I fail to turn in my work on time or get it done when it needs to be, Miss Moore doesn't pressure me to get it done faster, which really helps me.
What I like about gifted is having a great teacher that's funny, nice, helpful, and compassionate, and the quiet room in here, and the fun projects and the good assignments, and the advanced learning.
What I like about gifted is that we get to do Mr. Madness mysteries, we get to play Prodigy, we get to do more work than others, we get to do presentations. I like the way that Mrs. Moore teaches us. I like when we write.
What I like about gifted is I have more freedom than I will in other classes. I get to express myself more, and I get to work independently more.
What I like about gifted is that the work is more challenging and you get more focus on things that you might not understand than back in the normal class. I also like it because I have a great teacher and because we do more hands-on activities.
The thing I least like about gifted is that other teachers and classmates treat me like a genius, even though I'm not.
There are some things that I do not like, being other teachers depending on us, which is fine, but sometimes I do not know the right answer or what to do.
They made that together.
That's nice.
All right. There's some more reasons that students understand and love the gifted classroom. What our teachers do is amazing. They will work from the core materials from the district to move at either a faster pace, go deeper into with supplemental materials and enrichment. Or sometimes it's the students driving. They're really interested in this piece that they did from the book. All right, let's go deeper into it. We're going to modify and move our curriculum in this direction because these kiddos are moving us that direction. If you're looking for educators who are very, very good at differentiation and understanding students, intervention specialists of any kind and our gifted intervention specialists do a really great job. If you have any questions that have popped up or you can think of, I can try my best to answer.
So the kids that that are identified and then choose to participate, what is, I don't know, for lack of a better term, like the retention rate? So if I, as my third grader is identified and starts to participate, do they typically stay in the gifted program as their development happens?
They do. There are a few outlying incidents where, through partnership, through a team of people, it may not be the best fit and will go back to the regular classroom. However, most students that enter stay with the program, stay in it through middle school. Where we're seeing a little bit more students not necessarily participating in service would be at the high school level, where the courses aren't aligned. And one of the things Denise and I have talked about is working with the counselors. So to make sure the counselors know each student that has a gifted identification, what they're gifted in, and see if they're interested in a class that may count as gifted service. Yeah, good question. Anything else?
The law does define too, when you talk about that retention piece, that once identified as a student, once a student is identified as gifted, they maintain that identification throughout the rest of their academic career. It's not something that they have to reassess into or requalify, and they can choose, the choice can be made not to serve, but you can't lose that identification either.
Got it.
Very good.
Is that perhaps why the testing to identify is so stringent, so that you don't get a scenario where a child might be advanced for that phase of development? But then, yeah.
Absolutely. The tests that you are able to use to identify have to, their plus or minus error is a lot smaller than, say, the Ohio State tests are. So the testing itself is a little bit more stringent. However, the state has really put a push on early identification. And it's a double-edged sword because a lot of times we may get to middle school and high school and teachers are saying, this student is gifted, but it was a second grade identification. The reason being, the logic behind early identification is, let's get in there and intervene. Let's make sure they are growing every year so that way they continue on that path. So it is actually a very logical piece for the early identification. As long as we're servicing correctly and doing the right things for students, that we are helping them grow. If they're growing, we're not going to see that in high school, that big drop off. So yes, the testing is definitely a part of it, and other factors as well.
Lindsay, I probably should know this, but I'm curious, how many fall into that late identification, 4th, 5th, 6th grade? Very many?
No, we get our identifications generally
Pretty early and pretty accurately.
second and third grade, and then we'll have handfuls after that. And we'll have a lot of those second and third graders continue like hitting those marks. So that's always a positive. But we do mostly the early ages, you're going to see bigger pockets of first identifications. Yep.
So can that be an issue though for having to keep that identification? Let's say they identified in second grade, but then all of a sudden they are in middle school, and not to say that we didn't service that student correctly, but things happen and all of a sudden in middle school you're not hitting that mark. But then in the same way, you can't be taken off that identification list. So then, of course, because we have to go back to the state report card, which nobody likes to do, but then all of a sudden that falls in that category of we're not servicing that identified gifted student.
Got it.
However, we don't get to remove that student from being identified for whatever life happens and things could happen, and all of a sudden that child is not where they should be. And it's not for lack of trying, it's just they didn't get it.
Puberty happens, or adolescence happens.
Yeah, or home situations or everything.
Absolutely.
Sure.
To me, there's nothing, again, that would help a school district account for that, because then it looks like a ding on the state report card again.
And we are walking that tightrope, and we are trying our best to walk that tightrope. It does. However, the good thing to come out of it is that we are able to look down to the individual student level.
Right.
We have not gotten that far in a long time to be able to dig down to that. And we've been able to ask some of the gifted intervention specialists, hey, look at this slide. What do you think it is that's happening here? And for now, that tightrope, we're doing a pretty good job with the service and identification. So it kind of says, all right, we're doing a good job. If that starts to slide, that's when we look at some of the things that we're doing. So yes, it's
Right.
you're right. They're trying to ding us where they can,
Of course.
and we're trying to make sure that doesn't happen.
But these are the things that honestly, like the general public needs to be aware of because it's
Absolutely.
very easy to look at a state report card that's public knowledge and gets published and whatnot.
Right.
And for the general public to say they can't even serve the gifted students, right? You know what I mean? And it's having that knowledge
Right.
of
Yes.
All the craziness from the state level.
that.
And honestly, I'm very
Yeah.
proud of this district. When people are talking to me outside, I look to this district because you really have invested in your gifted population and moved things in a very good direction. So you're doing a great job as far as working with our gifted population, investing that.
Lindsay, how many districts do you work in?
Last year was 8, this year's 6.
6.
Yes, some just a few days here and there. So.
Right.
It
Yeah.
seems, oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, it's based on size, right? Is the time proportional? Yeah. Sorry. Good.
It seems we're hanging an awful lot on a test of a 7-year-old for the rest of their educational career. And while I understand, the specificity of those tests that are given, and they're very scientific, does the fact that us and many other districts struggle to meet the value added index for gifted perhaps indicate that the test of the 7-year-old may not hold true the whole time? It may not be, at a K through 12 label or indicator that they can live up to, so that the testing may not show longevity. It may show the moment.
And I'm going to tell you would be a very good advocate to go down to Columbus. just a thought. But that is where, like I said, this district does a good job at looking at the individual student, and it's happened. You're right. That piece has happened, and we've been able to make team decisions with parents, with the student, and get students where they need to be. We have enough wiggle room. I'm not going to tell you you're going to be a ding on my report card. This is a student. We're going to do what's best for you, and we've done that. And I'm very proud of the team to be able to make those decisions and still walk that tightrope line, because you're right. That happens. It does.
Has there been any talk about a method of appeals process where the parent, the teacher, and the team of educators thinks that, this 7-year-old designation doesn't apply now, where perhaps those same tests that the state approved is what you use for designating could be reapplied? Reassess?
The thing I will tell you that I know that new operating standards are on the horizon, and that is not something that is changing. I don't know personally. I wouldn't want to give you any information, false information, if that has been discussed at all. I can't say I disagree with things about it, but we are following the law.
Sure.
Yeah, very good question.
And in that respects, at least within our department, we have always said that the district's shoulders are much larger and stronger. If the district feels that hit with a report card, at the other end of that, we have a student that can be comfortable within their academic arena and have coursework that is appropriate for them, that they are confident and comfortable with, and a team is deciding that we'll roll that out the way we need to.
Mm-hmm.
We're just, and you've heard me say this before, we are such a comprehensive district that our goal is always to make sure that we have something for every child.
Yes. Yeah.
I think one good thing about our community, at least, is I think the majority of people, especially parents of students that are in the district, understand that state report card isn't the final stamp. I mean, ultimately, and we talk about it all the time, it's just this big umbrella for every district in the state of Ohio. But let's look at our district and, what's our graduation rate? How are our kids feeling about their classes and everything else? And that's where getting down to the individual student is the better thing. I could care less what a stupid report card from ODE who has an assessment test that doesn't qualify, but yet they're giving us an assessment test. That's ridiculous. I mean, that's stupidity at its best right there.
I am going to remain neutral on that comment.
You may. I can do that as a single board member, but I think for us, and that's as a parent of students through this district, I'm glad that that isn't the end all is our state report card grade. It is, okay, but how is this kid doing? And let's figure that out.
And I think to your point, we are beginning the process of data mapping and seeing how students are continually going through, and where we might have some slides, where we might individual students, and we're going to be looking at trends in that data to see if we're having a lot of students like that, then what I feel is we need to assess how we're assessing. If it's a one here, one there, we're pretty on target. If we start to see pockets of students really sliding at certain levels, that's a look at what we're doing and how we need to change things. So really evolve that piece to make sure we don't have that happening too often. Absolutely.
And that's where that iReady information is really valuable then. I mean, the more data we have over the years of using, because how many years have we had iReady now?
This is year
3?
Well,
I was thinking
COVID,
4.
COVID.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, that's true.
Depends
That-
on what you call COVID years.
Right. So, yeah, I can see, I mean,
Yeah.
when it comes to that, more data you can have, the better off you're going to be to get that early on. So,
Any other questions or anything that stands out about our gifted department or gifted programs?
It was terrific. Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you very
for
much.
giving me the time.
Thank you for all you do.
I think you guys can see how much confidence we have there. I remember this conversation that Denise and I had 4 years ago. It's just so nice as I can put my administrative head on my pillow at night and feel like our kids are covered. And it's really because of Lindsay's efforts to make sure that happens. So it's just been really nice to really give it to her and trust her, and she's done a great job. So Lindsay, thank you.
The educators deserve all the
I know.
praise.
There's a face on the whole. I mean, you got an eye on the whole thing. We appreciate that. All right.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Price, shall I proceed?
Let's go back. So Chantel, we just went over the legislative report. So no,
That's fine.
no. I mean, but we said we'd come back to it because we already knew you were running a little late. So
Sorry
wanted
about
to
that. And
no,
it's fine because I don't have an update this evening. So
Good.
okay.
Good.
Mr. Detweiler, if it's all right, while we're kind of on there,
Yeah.
it's not really that it's a walk-on item, but wanted to give the board an update on policy and curriculum. We had our meetings. So one for curriculum, a couple of the bigger things, and I think, and Denise can attest to this more, but this will be good changes for our students and our parents. So when it comes to course guides and description guides for everything, it's been reformatted. So many students and parents looking on their phone, it wasn't in a good format for that. So now it's going to be a lot easier for them. It's aligned different. It's color coded. Some are not NCAA approved. So if you're moving on to do college athletics, some courses, if they're not approved for that, they'll be able to see that, but also CCP courses are highlighted in a different color. So much more user friendly when it comes to middle school and high school course descriptions for the parents and students being able to get that information. Just updated it with everything. A couple of the bigger things really then just real quick on the curriculum side is we're adding a lifeguard course starting next year at the high school. Good thing to have, but also we've been short on having lifeguards that would work for some of our swim classes. So this is a win-win kind of for the thing. Also, it's just a semester course. You come out of it with your lifeguard certification. So that way, if a student wanted to take that for a semester course, they could. And also then have a summer job at someplace for lifeguard because they already have their certification, don't have to pay for it. It'll be taken care of in this class for them. So, and then hopefully that can draw some lifeguards into some of our swim courses that we offer to help, because obviously the instructor can't be the lifeguard also, so we need a lifeguard on premise for that. So the other thing was adding a book. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is a newer class. This is the first year for it, correct?
This is the second year.
Second year for it. So it's a language arts, and it's the social issues and multicultural literature. So it's
Grades 11 and 12.
and it's only a semester course, right?
That is
It comes
correct.
after a creative writing class, and then they take this. So a book was added. I'm not a reader, so I don't know anything about it, but other people who do read books, it's called The Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. And it really goes to Mr. or Miss Minoski, who came and presented, who is the teacher for this course, talked about the book and everything. And it's a Native American Indian, goes to a off the reservation to a regular school, but also has some physical defects or handicaps also. So easy read. Everyone who there were a few people in the meeting that had read it said it was a great read. It's great for the students because it's not like reading Shakespeare where they're going to have to think a lot about what they're reading, but really think about what's involved in the book itself. So all of us felt that it was a good addition to the course for that. And then policy-wise, most of it was just revisions on legislature, verbiage for that. Really,
Nothing really new there. Clarify, there's some weapons. The weapons law has changed a little bit, so that we've had some updates on that.
with having constitutional carry now instead of concealed carry, so it just
Mostly, and those will all be on our next agenda for first reading. So
okay.
they'll be on their way.
So, but anyway,
They still turn around to get all that organized and ready for the board. So, okay.
all right.
Ms. Price.
Sorry.
No, great.
Moving on to recommendations.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Starting with item 1. One of our favorite things to do is thank everybody for their donations. So we've got several here: Faith Lutheran Church, St. John's Lutheran Church, St. Mark's Lutheran Church, Charlie and Connie Patchett, and Wendy's.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve item 1, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Spiritu. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom, Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Item 2 is Red River Technologies. It's basically our staff personnel management. So if you're putting in for a sick day, this is the software that we'll log into. It's a change. We have ASOP currently. A few things we do and don't like about it, so we're trying to go a different direction with Red River Technologies. We'll see how that goes. And then item 3, as I mentioned before, will be your official approval for me to allow students to stay home on March 22nd for a district-wide professional day around safety.
Can I get a motion to approve items 2 and 3, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Spiritu. Any discussion?
I should clarify that we are about 18 days over on hours. A few years ago, the state went to hours instead of days. We still count days and still count snow days, but we are way over on hours. So that 1 day less with students still way underneath our cap from the state, so to speak, on hours. So,
Have we done a safety day in the past?
no. This
Okay.
was sort of conversation with our first responders and just everything that's going on. I know there's some other districts doing the same thing. To pair that with the rollout from the governor with this Ohio School Safety Commission, There's a couple even new cabinet level positions in the state government around safety. So we'll be working with them. So it's kind of all these things came together. And I thought it'd be really time for us to take some time and just have a full day with the adults.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved.
Thank you very much. Moving on to staff and student achievement. Item 4, we have one separated here for vote for a certified staff substitute, please.
Can I get a motion to approve item 4, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Laird. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Lewis. Any discussion?
Just an interrupt. I'm sorry, I should have explained this earlier. These are student teachers who could be available to sub for us. Kind of a new thing that we've worked with universities to, since they're already in the classroom, if the teacher's out, these kids can step right in and actually get paid for carrying the class forward. So it's a win-win really for all of us.
And don't get me started on this first one. So.
Right.
All right, roll call, please.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Abstain.
Thank you very much. Moving on, item 5. A few other students that fall in that same certified staff substitute. So it's Cole, Anthony, and Reagan. Margaret Edwards will be our new evening custodian at Atkinson and Krogan. And then Margaret Edwards as a new support staff substitute. Item 6, we have, here we go, springtime supplemental contracts. Hard to believe. Here we go, right? It'll be warm before you know it, right? Maybe. I don't
Let's
know.
hope.
Item 7, consider approval for the supplemental contracts. John Elder back for his, I don't know what year it is. It's a few.
When I looked at the agenda, I thought, I wonder how long he's
Yeah. When I,
coaching.
I had him as a track coach and a history teacher
there you go.
and at Terra.
We won't talk about John's longevity. in
And my
public.
kids had him. All
Other
my
than
kids.
to honor it.
Exactly. There you go.
Right.
Thank you. A tip of the hat for sure. Item 8, supplemental duties. Again, these would be then our non-certified staff that will be taking those positions listed there under section 2. Item 9, supplemental duty positions. If you turn the page, they are listed there. That's Lisa Wolf, head tennis coach for girls this spring. Item 10, special event workers. Tila Jones is going to help us as a ticket scanner for swim and dive. And then Michelle and Tila will be helping us for athletic workers for basketball. Item 11, special event workers, Joe Hersey and Robert Moore for the winter tournament and athletic events. That list continues on the next page. I'm sorry. Reagan, Philip, Gina, and Chad. Item 12, approval of special event wages. We, Megan did a little work, made sure we were, actually, this is a little scary, but our $10 was no longer at the minimum wage. So we had to up this 10 cents to make sure we were still in compliance. So that's what that is about for item 12. So if I have a motion for all those, please.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve items 5 through 12, please? Motion by Mrs. Spiritu. Can I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mrs. Bloom. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Spiritu, Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's approved. All right, moving on to report of the treasurer.
Good evening. We have our December financials for you tonight. Not too much going on. Looking more into what's coming up in the next couple of months. We'll be getting our real estate collections will be coming in, so we'll see how we're running with revenues for that. And of course, we're just hoping and praying that the state budget turns out well in the next couple of months, because that has to be done by June 30th of this year, and that will be for the next 2 years. So it's always just fun to know what's going on. Our expenses, we continue to have salaries stay pretty stagnant, and our purchases are kind of right where we want them to be. We did have some purchases in the beginning of the year that did increase it a little bit, but we still think we're running right on track. Obviously, inflation's getting to us a little bit with the budget increases, but we haven't seen a huge hit to it yet. So we have that, the financials for December on tonight. And then, of course, we have a couple appropriation changes. The Future Farmers student activity account is going to another event that they had not planned on. So we had to increase that so that they could bring the funds in, of course, and then also be able to expense it out. And then we are also going to be utilizing the AC Nicholas fund to purchase some library books. So that is all I have for tonight.
Okay. Can I get a motion to approve items 13 and 14, please?
So moved.
Motion by Mrs. Bloom. Could I have a second? Second by Mrs. Espiritu. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Spiritu? Yes. Ms. Laird?
Yes.
Ms. Lewis?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes, motion's approved. All right, moving on to board member communications. Lori.
Well, thank you to Mrs. Felsky for the presentation. It was interesting to see how they test these kids and find out who needs to be in what. I know I had a couple of kids who did AP classes. My oldest one was in honors classes all the way from grade school through. So I don't know. I don't remember them. I don't know how they tested them. I just know that they said, oh, they're in AP classes. Okay. And I had a tag team with Mr. Walker on trying to bump Ellie up in math. I couldn't, we kept tagging back and forth. I said, just do it. So he did. And thank you for the donations, for all the stuff that people are willing to donate and for the kids and all the people that are jumping on board to help out with subbing and helping out in classes.
Okay. Anything else?
I want to echo what Lori mentioned. Thank Mrs. Felsky for the presentation. It was a good presentation, very informative. And thank the community for the donations. And then I attended the breakfast for the Martin Luther King breakfast, and it was had a great turnout. The students did great with their speeches and presentation. It was great. I really enjoyed it. So.
Okay. Chantel?
Good. Again, thank you for the presentation and all that's done for the gifted students. And all of our students, you know, it's, I think everybody can feel comforted that there's a lot of care. And Mr. Detweiler, these workshops help to showcase that. And like you said, it highlights things that, you know, our parents may not know and the general community may not know. And I just really appreciate the time that they put in bringing that complicated stuff to simplified highlights. Thank
On
you.
record, so we've got it. That's right.
That's right.
That's what I like. I can send people back to these
Yes.
videos.
Yeah.
Really valuable. Really valuable.
Yeah. Okay. Sarah?
Again, just to echo, thankful for the presentation. One thing that one of the children in the video said was that being in the gifted class was a big opportunity. And I think that's where we want all of our kids to be, to feel like being a Fremont Ross Little Giant is a big opportunity for them, no matter what the landscape of their educational experience looks like. We want them to walk out of here feeling like they had a big opportunity and that they could seize it with support, you know, from all of our faculty and staff and teachers. And I just think it's a really good time to be a student in this school district. And really proud of all the things that, you know, our district has to offer all of our children. So I just think that stuck out. I wrote that down when he said that. That was a big opportunity. It's also nice to see like all the people that we have volunteering their time, whether it's to coach, the paid volunteering, but you know, they're still giving up their time to coach or mentor or be a ticket scanner. Like all those things take a commitment from people from our community. And I think it's great that when you look back at these lists of coaches, there's a lot of little giants in here, a lot of former students from the district. So from a grow your own kind of standpoint, it's rewarding, I think. And for those of you who are in education and you're seeing your students come back and do things to help the community that gave to them, I think that's rewarding as well. And it fits in the be giant, be present, and be great.
Thank you. Well, I'll reiterate, thank you for the presentation tonight on the gifted. And John, like you said, anything that we can have, whoever came up with the idea of videoing our board meetings and having that workshop to where we can present this stuff and have that information, one for us, but also for the community. And it's so easy to go back to and understand, oh, so that's why they do that, or that's how they do that.
Hear from the experts. That's the part I like.
Yeah, I mean, it's just great information for everybody in our community to be able to have and to be able to just pull it up and see and hear it straight. It's not written minutes or anything like that. So great job on all of those. It's just great information. Yeah, Saturday was a busy day for our district. So congratulations to our band students that did well at their competition. You said Genoa was where they were at?
They went, yeah.
And then our swim teams, both boys and girls, finished second in the track, so congratulations to them. And as they start getting into tournament time and everything else. For the ladies wrestling tournament, good job to Coach Long and Coach Ettrick. That was for a first year having that and having 40-some teams here of lady wrestlers that is just up and coming. I was there for just about the whole thing. What a great tournament. What a great time for everybody to come to our school district for a change for a big tournament like that. So everybody did a great job, the athletic department, everybody. So, and then good luck to the ladies tonight. Basketball game is here. I'm heading over there when we're wrap up here. They've got their rematch with Central Catholic tonight. So big game for the ladies basketball team tonight. So good luck to them tonight. So other than that, I think that should do it. We have no reason for executive session. So could I have a motion for adjournment, please?
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Lewis. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Laird. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. Lewis,
Yes.
Ms. Laird,
Yes.
Mrs. Bloom,
Yes.
Mrs. Spirito.
Yeah.
Mr. Price.
Yes, motion's carried. Meeting's adjourned.
Are we offline, Tori? Add up.